This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there, welcome to this edition of Global Business Africa. In the course of the hour, we'll run through the business news stories you need to know about from the continent and beyond. But first, a very quick run through the markets here for you. So relatively flat numbers coming through in some of the markets we track here. In fact, Kenya's basically given up all the gains that it had made a little earlier in the year. It's basically back to where it started 2021 from. Elsewhere in the world, Tesla shares are down by almost 4% in the market today, at least in pre-market trading. On a year-to-date basis, it's also relatively flat, just about 0.5% higher. Now, for a stock that essentially had gone up by over 300% in the last 12 months, performance so far this year has been pretty subdued. Here's what's coming up tonight. Uganda becomes the second African country after Zambia to seek a rescheduling of its debts. The central bank in Nigeria put sugar and wheat on a forex restriction list in order to boost local production. And a freight train from southwestern China to the Dutch capital makes its maiden voyage. We started the program tonight in Uganda, where the government over there says it may approach its major creditors, seeking suspension of debt repayment as it grapples with a growing default risk. Uganda's total public debt load surged to over $18 billion as of the end of 2020. That's 35% more compared to the previous year. This was occasioned by fresh borrowing to cover revenue shortfalls as a range of measures taken to combat COVID-19 hit the economy fairly hard and stifled tax collections. External creditors include China and the World Bank. They hold roughly 2/3 of Uganda's debt. Over the last decade, the East African nation has drastically expanded its borrowing, especially from China, in order to fund infrastructure development. That includes money that went into airports, power plants, and roads. Negotiations are currently underway as well with China for a $2.2 billion loan to finance the construction of a standard gauge rail line. Over in West Africa, the National Statistics Office in Ghana says that the country is on the path to recovery after it suffered a downturn due to the pandemic. According to the government agency, Ghana's economy grew by 3.3% in the last quarter of the year. That's from a contraction of 3.2% seen in Q3 2020. Here's CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai with the details from Accra.
Ghana's Statistical Service says the real estate industry contributed significantly to economic growth at the end of last year when COVID-19 lockdown restrictions were eased, while other sectors of the economy like tourism and hospitality industry were the hardest hit. The housing sector recorded a growth of 43.5%. The lockdown influenced many Ghanaians, especially those living abroad, to buy homes. Analysts are concerned that the hospitality industry in Ghana is still reeling from the pandemic.
Services sector has been the one that has been leading in terms of contributing to the economy. So the hotel chains and all of that hugely affected. I'm sure some of the hotels I'm involved in a lot of activities in the hotels in terms of events and what have you. You go and see that most of them have closed their conferences and what have you because of the danger that revolves around this COVID-19.
The government reviewed its projection of the economic growth last year from 6.5% to 0.9% when the pandemic struck. But the year ended with a 0.4% growth, according to data from the Statistical Service.
The government has to be strategically positioned to support these major players in these chains, in this value chain of the tourism. It's very key, so that when we rebound back, we will be at a place where we can build from where we left off pre-COVID.
The IMF has estimated Ghana's economy to grow by 4.6% this year, higher than the 3.3% growth it's projected for the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. Ghana is among few African countries that recorded a positive economic growth rate last year, despite the fallout from COVID-19 pandemic. The government is targeting a 5% growth in the economy this year as it rolls out its vaccination. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
On to North Africa, the Central Bank of Egypt has allowed banks to issue electronic currencies that will be subject to its direct supervision. Now, each coin in the mobile payment service will essentially be equal on a one-to-one basis with one Egyptian pound. At CGTN's Yasser Hakim now reports the Apex Bank has already warned financial institutions against the use of cryptocurrencies, which it sees as being very high-risk assets.
The issuance of the electronic currencies is the first of its kind in Egypt. One unit of the new electronic currency is to have the value of one Egyptian pound and is to be used via the mobile wallet and service providers.
The state and central bank policies are aimed at achieving financial inclusion and digital transformation, as well as to transform the society into a cashless economy. It protects the different sides of any transaction, whether consumers or traders. This system will help merge the informal economy with the formal economy, as all transactions will be monitored by banks and so will naturally increase the tax revenue for the state.
The central bank has stepped up its drive for digital transformation in the last few years, encouraging Egyptians to part way with cash and log online.
Electronic currencies are going to be the trend and an alternative to the paper notes and coins. It's a good idea, especially that the central bank can control the transactions, making it easier and safer to use.
The Bitcoin or virtual and electronic currencies are the future. The Bitcoin or cryptos are volatile. To have a currency monitored by the central bank will create stability, which is important for us.
But is the introduction of the electronic currency a step towards issuing cryptocurrencies, which the central bank has strongly rejected?
There's a difference between the electronic currency and cryptocurrency. The electronic currency is issued against an actual amount of money in the person's bank account, unlike the cryptocurrency that doesn't have any financial control, no base or form to protect the currency owner, nor to monitor illegal transactions.
There will be a limit on issuing electronic units for each person. However, the e-currency can be exchanged into Egyptian pound. Achieving financial inclusion and digital transformation will elevate Egypt in the world rankings and ratings of the international markets and will help improve the climate for business in Egypt. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
All right, then a quick run through some company news. Egypt says it hopes it will soon end a dispute over compensation regarding the huge container vessel that blocked the Suez Canal last month. The Suez Canal Authority is claiming $916 million in damages from the Ever Given's owners. The 400-meter-long vessel is owned by Japan's Shoei Kaisen Kaisha, but it's operated by a firm based in Taiwan. It blocked the vital waterway for 6 days, disrupting shipping markets and ports around the world. In East Africa, digital mobile lenders in Kenya will have 6 months to be licensed by the central bank if lawmakers adopt a proposed law. The Central Bank of Kenya Amendment Bill of 2021 aims to curb the steep digital lending rates that have plunged many borrowers into a debt trap, as well as predatory lending. It will also seek to push out rogue players amid concerns about unethical business practices, including money laundering, illegal mining of customer private data, and the shaming of borrowers who default on repayment. The UK consumer book market had an interesting year. Retail sales were up 7% to about $3 billion last year, as readers facing several lockdowns at home made their escape into books. Fiction sales were up 16%, non-fiction were up by 4%. Print accounted for $2.3 billion of those sales. Digital sales, however, were up by 24%. Clearly, you still prefer the physical book. Bestsellers included The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman, Girl, Woman, Other by Benedina Evaristo, and 7 Ways by Jamie Oliver. And HSBC has reported stronger than expected earnings, and it says the economic outlook is a lot brighter. Europe's largest bank by assets reported income of $5.8 billion for the first quarter of the year. HSBC's results were strong in its heartland of Asia, particularly in the wealth and asset management division, that recorded a collective $24 billion in net client money under management in the quarter. The investment bank also reported a surge in trading and advisory revenues, matching trends seen earlier this month on Wall Street. That's a run through your company headlines. All right, then let's get back to our lead story. Uganda, especially the finance minister in that particular country, expressing interest in asking the country's creditors for a bit of forbearance, for a break in debt service. What does that mean for the Pearl of Africa? Let's explore that in some more detail. John Walugembe is the Executive Director of the Federation of Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises in Uganda. He joins us now live from Kampala. John, welcome to the program. Does Uganda, in your view, does a country need to raise fresh debt to pay off the expensive part of its $18 billion debt portfolio, or is a break on debt service sufficient to give the country the breathing room it needs?
Okay, so thank you very much. First of all, I need to say that Uganda's debt levels are reaching unsustainable levels. They estimated to reach close to 47.2% of GDP. And during this year's budget, government is projecting to borrow more, so we would not recommend this method. I think government can look at different ways of financing its debt. One, government can cut expenditure. Two, government can raise taxes. The challenge with raising taxes now is that because of the pandemic, a lot of businesses are struggling. So I don't think that they can sustainably raise money this way. So I think debt is inevitable, but they shouldn't simply borrow debt to repay debt. They should look at other ways of managing this, principally through.
Right, and unfortunately we've lost that connection to John Walugembe there in Kampala. Time for a short break here on Global Business Africa. Here's what's coming up. Nigeria's central bank restricts FX access to sugar and wheat imports in order to boost local production. And we'll take a look at the extent to which supply chains have been disrupted in our series on the impact of the pandemic on Africa's economy.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business, only on CGTN.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference. Welcome back to the program. Let's head over to Nigeria. The central bank over there has announced plans to place sugar and wheat on its foreign exchange restriction list. This is part of a broader plan, according to the CBN, that's aimed at boosting local production of these commodities. Now, despite spending over $150 million importing sugar in 2019, Nigeria still has enormous demand, and demand in the country is simply way beyond what local supply can currently meet. Here's CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam with the details.
Officials of Nigeria's central bank taking a tour of a 60,000 hectares sugar factory in north-central Nigeria. The factory, estimated at $500 million, is run by Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote. The government is a major financier of the project and it wants to cut imports on the products.
Right now, the Central Bank of Nigeria spends close to between $600 to $1 billion, $600 million to $1 billion importing sugar into the country. And that is a humongous sum of money. And so we're saying that if Nigeria can produce sugar and be self-sufficient in food production, that this should be something that we should support. We would also leverage by providing some funding for this project in Naira. And of course, he needs dollar to import the equipment that will keep this project running. Hopefully in the next 2 years, we will provide that support. So that is our interest here, because it will reduce reliance on importation on forex.
Sugar is a staple in Nigerian homes. The nation's sugar demand currently stands at 1.6 million metric tons, but local production capacity is 130,000. Economic watchers say the decision to ban importation of the said products is wrongly timed.
While you are investing on local production, you don't stop importation. And moreover, what is the quantity of sugar and wheat importation compared to other things we imported, including PMS, that form the bulk of our foreign exchange spending and earnings? So it's just like you have an elephant as a problem, but you are chasing a hand. Even if you kill the hand, we need to reduce the size of the elephant.
Nigeria is an import-dependent economy, but the central bank has been working to change that narrative. It has placed an importation ban on more than 40 items to encourage local production. Items like rice, maize, cement and margarine are among those on the FX restriction list, with sugar and wheat to be included soon. But experts warn that if issues of weak infrastructure and farmers' insecurity are left untackled, Nigeria may still be a long way from achieving food independence. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
On to South Africa. The state-owned low-cost carrier, Mango, is unlikely to be able to pay the salaries of its 500 or so employees from May as it struggles to stay afloat. The Department of Public Enterprises said over the weekend that it's in talks with Mango's board and the interim board of the parent company, South African Airlines, about repositioning the national carrier subsidiaries in light of delayed funding from the government. Here's Angela Kobler with the details.
There's an unexplained delay in receiving government funding, which means that in all likelihood the low-cost carrier will cease operating from 1 May. Government funding options appear to have dried up.
The only possibility would be to borrow more, and I'm not sure whether the Treasury has the ability to issue more guarantees for lenders and whether that would be acceptable to lenders. So as a result, unfortunately, Mango has also run out of money, similar to SAA, which stopped paying its employees in March last year.
Analysts are wondering why the Mango board and management didn't see the writing on the wall sooner, especially during COVID and the impact on global air travel. Traffic volumes remain subdued and pegged at between 40 and 50% levels compared to pre-COVID data.
It hasn't restructured the company for a lower level of activity, and it was necessary to actually get rid of, say, at least half of the aircraft, or maybe more, and also adjust the personnel complement to about that type of level to make provision for a lower scale of activity post-COVID. That didn't happen, and as a result, the costs or the leasing cost of the aircraft and associated costs, insurance and aircrew and so on, kept on running.
Questions are now being levelled at the board and management.
And where was the board of Mango? You know, that is something for the board to consider. The moment that you run into a financial distress position, you're very close to the edge. And the board of directors must have taken a decision to either put it in business rescue or restructure the company itself. It's just really unpalatable that no change was actually adopted as far as the company's operations is concerned.
And what are the prospects of finding and securing a private sector buyer for the low-cost airline?
Maybe a year or two ago, Mango was a very attractive investment. At that time, there were many people interested in buying the company. But if you run it into the ground, obviously the cash value for the company has depreciated significantly.
Analysts are now wondering why the management team and board of directors didn't act sooner to save the airline. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
At least a year has now passed since the first COVID-19 cases are reported across the continent. To date, the available data shows that roughly 3% of the population has contracted the virus, but the enormous long-term impact will be on the economy. The International Monetary Fund says that sub-Saharan Africa is the one part of the world that will grow by the slowest this year. Tonight, we'll take a look at how the pandemic has disrupted supply chains not just in Africa, but on the globe. Let's start in the mining sector, specifically in South Africa. Here's Angelo Coppola with a deep dive into the mining sector, which is a mainstay of the continent's most industrialized economy.
The South African mining sector took a massive 30% hit in production levels in the second quarter of 2020. This was followed by a 40% recovery in the third quarter.
But the fourth quarter was not that, was disappointing, let me put it that way. We thought, look, you won't get another 40% increase, but it was actually very flat. In short, we ended up about 12% below in terms of production.
Fortunately, there was strong support from commodity prices and another surprise.
It continued to improve over the period by 24% in total. The second surprise was everybody thought, including institutions like the World Bank, that supply chains would be disrupted. Now, us supplying to the rest of the world was a bit disrupted because of logistics, but definitely not in the first phase. We didn't find any disruption in our supplies coming to us.
In-country logistical challenges didn't help matters when it came to the country's rail and harbours network. Then there were the border posts, and there were two impacts there.
One, people moving out and out of South Africa, the SADC workers moving out and then coming back. And the second part is actually getting product to mainly the Maputo corridor, to the Maputo harbour.
The sector employs over 400,000 people from South Africa and its neighbouring countries, 13% of whom aren't back at work yet.
There's still about 60,000 people not back at work because of the risk. Either age and then linked to that comorbidities like diabetes and silicosis and TB and whatever. And we know that because we screen all workers every day.
The South African mining sector were lucky. The surging commodity prices cushioned it from some of the blows felt by other industry sectors. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, the continent as a whole is a key source of raw materials for key industries across the globe. The DRC and Zambia, for instance, they produce a fair bit of copper. Some of the largest platinum reserves in the world are found between South Africa and Zimbabwe. CGTN's Wang Majie spoke to experts on how the economic impact from this virus, particularly on supply chain disruptions, have affected companies operating in China who are doing business in the continent.
Africa has been hit hard by COVID-19. Available statistics to date show around 3% of the continent's population has contracted the virus, and the regional economy could take a beating, with a UN report from March showing Africa could face its first recession in 25 years, with output losses due to the virus estimated to reach $99 billion. Additionally, the IMF says Africa registered the slowest growth in the world in 2020, with its GDP falling by 2.6% last year.
Africa could learn from China, which has formed a whole industrial supply chain. Companies involved in such a chain help it grow by fostering its self-circulation.
Africa has been a source of raw materials for global industries, but the onset of COVID-19 has disrupted supply chains, including for said materials. So how have supply disruptions from Africa impacted Chinese industrial companies?
Raw materials can be produced like they usually are. Freight charges have gone up sharply. Plus, there's the cost of nucleic acid testing and also human resources management, needed to help workers whose mental health has been affected by the pandemic.
Experts say Chinese companies are switching things up on the continent due to the pressure. Some companies have switched from importing iron ore from Africa, for example, to importing recycled iron steel from other countries instead. One firm, the Hongqiao Group, has strengthened its development of iron ore mines on the continent to break through supply disruptions by eliminating the middleman. But Professor He says China-Africa cooperation will be in good shape moving forward.
China will launch its vaccination program for both Chinese and African employees on the continent, which will build a more secure bamboo fence for health security. This will offer more promising economic cooperation between China and African countries amid the threat of COVID-19.
Professor He believes bilateral coordination in 2021 will be better than last year, especially with this year being the final year for the implementation of outcomes of the Beijing summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. Ramah Nyang, CGTN, Beijing.
Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has not only impacted businesses quite negatively, it's also forced people to cut down on their spending too. In Nigeria, the country's Statistics Bureau says that total household expenditure dropped from over $283 billion in 2019 to $279 billion the year after. Now, that decline essentially means that Nigerians spent a lot less cash due to the pandemic and all the cascading effects it had on household spending last year. CGTN's Deji Badmus takes up the story.
Before the COVID-19 pandemic hit Nigeria, Simisola Adigun shops here at her favorite supermarket every weekend. But now, she manages to do so just once a month, only picking up the most essential items she needs. Shopping, as she used to know it, has changed.
I used to have to spend for my family upkeep. I could spend as much as 80,000, to at least, to an extent, take care of family items for the month. But now it's either I make do with what I have initially or I have to add more. Either way, it's taking a lot of getting used to. The items I used to buy for, say, 500 naira, 1,000 naira has skyrocketed by 100%, even more. So now you have to manage what you have, the income that you have. The purchasing power has reduced.
Adigun is not the only one who has been forced to cut down on her consumption level. The National Bureau of Statistics' latest report on Nigerian gross domestic product shows household consumption declined by over $4 billion between 2019 and 2020.
And what that means is that the effect of COVID-19, as it were, in 2020, had hit deep on the consumption power of many Nigerians. This is following the disruption that came with COVID, which led to so many economic activity being halted and led to so many companies sacking a number of their staff or resizing their employee size, to the extent that it led to wage cut and all of that, that actually translated to reduction in income for most of Nigerians, which eventually translated to reduction in the general consumption.
With skyrocketing prices, a monthly inflation surge and depreciation of the naira, consumers like Adigun are having to implement major lifestyle changes in order to cope.
It's my needs over my wants now. I have to consider the things I really need over the things I want, and of course, even your needs, some take more priority than others. So I have to be watchful about the things that I need.
Nigeria is battling a galloping inflation, which is currently at 18.17%. Food inflation is even worse at 22.95%, and mainly blamed on insecurity in parts of the country. The government says it is doing everything to revive the economy. It's come up with various schemes aimed at boosting consumption. One of them is the central bank's COVID-19 stimulus package for households and small businesses.
We should look at possibility of even doing more, creating more loans through our targeted credit facilities for our households and small businesses particularly that were adversely impacted by COVID. Knowing fully well that when we support these households and medium and small enterprises, what that will result is that it will stimulate consumption spending that will ultimately lead to aggregate demand and then bolster our gross domestic product.
Adigun says she hasn't applied for the CBN stimulus just yet, preferring to manage with what she earns for now. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Now, the series will continue tomorrow. We'll be examining the impact of the pandemic, not just on the job market, but also on education systems across the continent. Time now for another break. Here's what's coming up next. A freight train from southwestern China all the way to the Dutch capital makes its maiden voyage. And we'll explore how this pandemic has radically changed working patterns in China when we return.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Welcome back to the program. These are some of the stories making your headlines at this hour. At least 2 people have been killed, 27 others have been injured in anti-military demonstrations in Chad. The French President Emmanuel Macron and the President of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, have both condemned the violent action taken against the protesters. Both leaders are calling for a solution that involves both civilian representatives and elements of the military. The Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari has urged the United States to consider moving its military headquarters for AFRICOM, Africa Command essentially, to the continent of Africa. He said this during a virtual meeting with the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Mr. Buhari views the move as one that will better tackle the growing armed violence in Western and Central Africa, as well as the Gulf of Guinea, the Lake Chad region and the Sahel. Africa Command is currently overseeing all of its operations on the continent from Stuttgart. The head of the United Nations peacekeeping operations has asked the Security Council to consider a 6-month rollover for the mandate of its mission in South Sudan's region of Abyei. Jean-Pierre Lacroix says that this would give parties in Sudan and South Sudan more time to resolve security issues in the oil-rich but still contested area. And finally, the number of new COVID cases in India has remained above 300,000 for 6 consecutive days. A number of countries are sending aid to help India battle this new wave of infections. Crematoria in the Indian capital of Delhi have been forced to make makeshift funeral pyres as the city runs out of space to cremate the dead. Deaths have been surging in India as a second wave of infections continues to devastate the country. That's a run through your headlines. Onto the business of logistics now. In Q1, China's investment in cooperation with countries along the Belt and Road Initiative did see steady growth. Some 3,400 cargo trains travelled between China and Europe during that period. That's 75% more year on year. Now, this increase in traffic comes as the first direct freight trains from southwestern China to the Dutch capital of Amsterdam and the British port city of Felixstowe departed, marking the formal opening of 2 more stops on that transportation line.
2 freight trains carrying electronic devices and medical supplies have left for Amsterdam and Felixstowe on the 8th anniversary of the Chengdu-Europe Railway Express. They are the latest additions to the now 61 lines of the Chengdu International Railway Port, which plays a vital part in building southwest China into a westbound gateway for foreign trade.
The eastbound cargo is also growing very rapidly, so we found a lot of new clients for that connection. We started first with once a week, and currently we are already running the train with 4 times a week. And that's not only milk powder, but it's also beer and cars.
The advantages of rail transport have been further recognized by businesses in foreign trade. For example, the cost is only 1/8 that of air freight, and the time needed is only 1/3 that of maritime shipping. Rail is much more reliable, especially in the post-epidemic era.
This railway port not only connects businesses in the Chongqing-Chengdu area with customers in Europe, but also other Chinese cities. So far, the port has cooperated with 20 other transportation hubs to facilitate internal economic circulation.
On Monday, the Chengdu Railway Port signed cooperation terms with one of the largest shipping ports in East China, the Zhoushan Port. It's part of plans to optimize logistics services for businesses in East Asia. CGTN, Chengdu.
Now, with China having largely brought the coronavirus under control within its borders, life in the world's second largest economy is getting back to normal. But, as our reporter Liu Jixin now explores, day-to-day work for many there will never be the same again.
Work, the power source of urban vitality. Even if you are not a workaholic, let's just admit that most of your life gives way to office hours. But when the epidemic struck, some companies had to make a choice.
We actually started with a staggered work arrangement, where only half of our team members came to work in the office.
Since COVID-19 hit, I've been carrying mobile phones and computers with me all the time. My work is somewhat flexible. My workplace can be wherever I want. For many people working for a digital economy, a mobile device and a smooth network will do the job. But the only issue is offline office really optional? I'm really looking forward to the combination of working from home and working in the office. Remote work is actually relatively advanced, but at present, it has its own challenges, like communication between colleagues.
People find it better to work with their peers rather than working on their own. And some of the benefits of working at the company's office are really attractive.
With the epidemic largely under control in China, most companies have returned to their pre-epidemic mode of work. In other countries and regions, remote work, more flexible office hours, and 4-day work weeks are becoming more popular. 20% of Canadian tech workers are able to work from home on a regular basis. And elsewhere, leaders in New Zealand and Finland are already advocating shorter working hours to boost domestic spending. 刘嘉欣 CGTN 北京。
Now, autonomous delivery methods, that's a fairly indirect way of talking about getting things delivered to you by drones. That sector is seeing some growth, but most deliveries, even in e-commerce, still rely traditionally on manpower. Last year's pandemic did boost online shopping in China, but still tens of thousands of delivery workers really haven't benefited from that boom. CGTN's Wang Qianhui explains why.
It's the hard-working carriers that serve as the solid foundation for smooth logistics in China, supporting its massive scale of online shopping and deliveries in as short a time as possible. But many say that even as their workload increases, their salaries have not, and they're even seeing a decline in their paycheck.
快递太不容易了，3个这么大袋的，这么大的一个袋子到6楼，挣了3块9毛钱。
It's difficult when the hard work doesn't pay off. Data shows the delivery company's charge dropped from about $4 per package in 2007 to $1.50 in 2020. Experts say that's mainly because of the surging demand, which is driving vicious competition.
It's hard to raise the fee due to the intense competition, but the costs have been rising fast. So when companies try to internally cut costs, many decided to pay less to workers.
Deliveries in China have surged to an annual average of 10 billion items a year, 80% of which are from online shopping. China Post Bureau anticipates the annual delivery items will surpass 95 billion this year. But the boom in deliveries does not pose any advantage to the couriers. In 2020, nearly half of the delivery workers made less than 5,000 yuan. That's about $770 a month, much lower than the national average income. And more than half of them have to deliver over 100 packages a day. Experts warn that squeezing the income of delivery workers will ultimately impact the entire business environment negatively, and they must find ways towards a more sustainable model.
The delivery industry must transform towards integrated logistics and extend their service chains. They also need to further associate their market with high value-added products such as medicine, cold chain products. In that way, they can be more sustainable.
Some delivery companies that promoted themselves with extremely low fees have now been punished. But at the end of a long, tiring working day for the delivery men, how to put more money into their pockets and keep the business environment running optimally are the key challenges to be faced. Wang Qianhui, CGTN.
Counting down the days, California is eyeing mid-June for what it's describing as a full reopening after a year of pandemic restrictions. More than ever, the entertainment industry is very, very keen to get back to business. Our Los Angeles correspondent Edith Tianxian checks out the places that define fun, especially theme parks.
A popular local attraction in the city of Palmdale, Dry Town Water Park has literally been dry for over a year. With its entire 2020 season cancelled, its budget deficit has climbed to over $1 million.
Being shut down, we're not running cabanas, we're not running birthday parties that the community has come to enjoy. Obviously, we're not open to enjoy the water park on the hot days. So, yeah, there was not any real revenue opportunities for us because of the closure in 2020. In the last 15 seasons, there's not have been a season such as 2020 where we've been asked to close, and as of today there's still no green light for 2021.
While water parks continue planning for possible reopening this spring, California theme parks are already humming, welcoming visitors back on April 1st, though at significantly reduced capacity.
For now, safety regulations make it quite a different experience. Ticket sales are now mostly online and limited, so while many people may enjoy shorter lines for a change, not all the rides are open. And long gone are the days of greeting costume characters or crowded parades, and no more snacking while standing in queues.
And this new reality comes with new business models. Disneyland Resort in California has cancelled annual passes that normally aim to attract visitors during off-season, a term that doesn't exist anymore. The company laid off over 32,000 employees in recent months during a time when its California park served as a vaccination site.
It's estimated that the theme park and attractions industry lost 5 times more employees last year on average than any other industry. The impact to the entire industry has been devastating. It's estimated that in 2019, the industry generated $25 billion. Last year, that dropped to $15 billion, a $10 billion loss.
The world's largest theme park operator, though, is seeing explosive growth in its streaming services, fortuitously launched just before the pandemic. Those profits have helped offset the billions of losses in theme park revenues, but for the mid-range companies, it's a different story.
SeaWorld, Six Flags, they got big lines of credit to help them get through this, and a lot of the money that they've borrowed is going to need to be paid off. So that's going to potentially depress any capital improvements that they're going to be able to do for the next few years. Data that we've seen has shown that up to a third of the market will not consider a visit to a theme park in 2021, no matter what happens.
Once a popular attraction for people of all ages, the theme park industry is now facing its toughest time, with its expansion in recent years now being replaced with what looks like years of recovery. It is Tianshan, CGTN, Los Angeles.
Back to the continent, South Africa has rolled out its first green hospital, Cintocare. The hospital brings together special expertise, some clever engineering, and new tech that's earned it a 5 Green Star rating. It's the first hospital of its kind in Africa and one of 5 in the world. Sumitra Naidu has that story on What's Hot.
Everything in this hospital has been carefully thought through to ensure it's delivering the best healthcare, which is also environmentally safe, right down to the paintwork. There is no lead or harmful toxins in the paint used throughout the building.
So on the green initiative side, it's a lot more comprehensive than people think. I think normally when you're talking green, you're expecting to see solar or you're expecting to see wind turbines. But in terms of energy saving, how we make hot water, for example, we use heat pumps. To heat and cool the building, we use a four-pipe chiller. That means we are extracting heat. Normally, heat is a byproduct of cooling down of your chiller. So we're extracting that heat to also heat up the building. So there's one of the avenues where we're very efficient.
Carefully designed systems also makes this hospital energy efficient.
We also harvest rainwater, and that grey water is then used to flush urinals and toilets. And that reduces your water consumption as a hospital a lot. In terms of energy and lighting, we have a major component of natural light coming in, and the artificial lighting used throughout the building is LED.
Cintocare is a specialized hospital focusing exclusively on head, neck, spinal and vascular surgery. The hospital has been open for just a few months and is already having an impact.
The patient stay is much shorter than in other hospitals, even if you take it on the same surgery that's been done. So I think most of the time our patients benefits more because of the fact that they can go home earlier, their pain is more reduced, and if your pain is reduced, then it means that your recovery is speedy. So that all alone makes us different.
The hospital generates its own oxygen and uses robots to deliver medication.
We manufacture our own oxygen, so that happens through a PSA process. It stands for pressure swing adsorption. And what we do is you are taking atmospheric air, you're compressing it and filtering it and drying it, and then it's passed through the PSA itself, which is a molecular sieve, and inside the molecular sieve you have a zeolite crystal. So what happens, your nitrogen is adsorbed and your oxygen passes on through to the pipeline of the hospital.
Cintocare is situated in South Africa's capital, Pretoria, and was built at a cost of $33 million. A worthy investment in the advancement of healthcare in the green space. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Pretoria, South Africa.
Quick run through commodity prices. Now, for most of the year, oil has been posting the strongest year-to-date gains amongst the basket of commodities we do track on the program. But copper is now a very close second, with Fords in London up at least 25% since the start of the year. Today's high was $9,780 a ton, and we haven't seen prices that strong since 2011. Copper prices, in fact, are more than doubled since the low hit last year of $4,371 a ton. On paper, this should be a fantastic story net positive for Zambia, the continent's second largest copper producer, but it may also complicate credit restructuring talks, particularly with general elections over there now just 3 months away. Here's what's coming up next. We'll be heading over to Tunisia next to take a look at an international organic farming fair.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's head back up north to Tunisia. The country is hosting an international organic agriculture and food fair, which aims to boost organic food exports from the North African state. More than 100 exhibitors from all parts of the country are taking part in the event, which was cancelled last year because of the pandemic. CGTN's Adam Chuachi attended the event. He filed this report.
The International Fair BioExpo is open to all professionals operating in the organic sector in Tunisia. Local farmers, processors, industrialists, artisans and distributors can gain exposure for their organic food businesses.
We're making organic and homemade jam, which is very tasty and healthy. The production of organic fruits is both a long process and a very expensive one. Yet the quality of fruits is much better than conventional farming. Taking part in this fair is a boost to our business and to organic agriculture.
Saida Fahi is a 60-year-old organic farmer. She has lost more than 50% of her revenue during the general lockdown caused by the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. But at the moment, the business of organic food production and distribution is booming.
I am happy because I was able to sell all my produce to the domestic market in 2 days. This is exceptional during the pandemic, which caused sales to plunge. I've signed a contract with an exporting company to export my organic products abroad.
The Minister of Agriculture noted that the state is offering incentives to organic farmers. In addition, the regional agriculture departments are providing counseling to rural women and supporting organic agriculture, which is creating jobs in inner regions of the country.
The organic food industry is one of the most promising sectors in Tunisia. Its added value is important to creating an economic dynamic in the agricultural regions. It continues to create jobs. Organic farming employs tens of thousands of rural women. It guarantees their financial autonomy. This fair shows the great potential of Tunisia's organic food production.
Several online conferences are broadcast during the BioExpo. Tunisian foreign experts are explaining the various modes of organic production, certification, organic cosmetics, fair trade, recycling and many other topics related to sustainable development. The Organic Agriculture and Food Fair is the first exhibition to be organized in Tunisia since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic last year. Experts explained the growing consumer demand for organic food by the concern regarding health and the environment. Abdel Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
And finally, Japanese corporate culture is known for its after-work drinking parties and other social events. But this pandemic has put those events on hold for the better part of a year. And that in turn has dealt a heavy blow to the hospitality industry. One company, however, has adapted to this era of remote working by taking its catering business straight into people's homes. Phoebe Amoroso has that story from Tokyo.
Since the coronavirus pandemic arrived in Japan last year, office parties have moved online and party food comes in these boxes.
Many of our customers use our service for welcome parties, end of year or general get-togethers. Some also order custom food boxes, adding their company logo or even requesting an original bowl to be included in the box.
The hospitality industry in Japan has taken a heavy blow. Restaurant sales fell a record 15.1% year-on-year in 2020, according to the Japan Food Service Association. Many businesses have focused on takeout and delivery. Others have closed down. Before the pandemic, this company was running a corporate catering service that provided companies with meals to facilitate employee communication. But most large events were cancelled and their sales were almost completely wiped out. Looking for inspiration, they saw how work was moving online, and so they came up with a solution. This food box is delivered directly to their customers' homes. It contains a selection of snacks and dishes, and it even comes with a choice of alcoholic or non-alcoholic drinks. The company says it can prepare and deliver meals for up to 20,000 people across the country to enjoy exactly the same thing at the same time.
With other services like Uber Eats, there is a difference between regions. With people working remotely and moving back to their hometowns, eating the same food and sharing the same experiences increases their sense of unity and belonging.
Demand for niche catering has taken off in the past year. Nompi says it counts several major corporations among its clients, with many IT companies in particular using its services. These businesses are ordering food boxes to bring together their different teams spread out across nationwide branches.
Working from home might be here to stay. A recent Kyodo News survey of 110 large Japanese corporations found that over 2/3 are planning to maintain or expand levels of remote work. However, online meetings pose a challenge for team building and innovation.
How much online participants talk will vary, and for those who don't speak much, it will impact their motivation. This could also impact productivity. However, Japan's work culture is known for its low levels of productivity, so I hope businesses will continue to make use of the advantages of hosting things online even after this pandemic.
With Japan facing a fourth wave of coronavirus infections, more catering businesses are trying to reach people, and more corporations are hoping they can make online teamwork taste better. Phoebe Amoroso, CGTN, Tokyo.
A quick run through the currencies as we wrap up the program. We did speak about Uganda exploring the possibility of a debt service break a little earlier in the hour. The currency's not changed much as far as its trend is concerned for most of the year. In fact, it's up roughly 1.5% against the American dollar, but that doesn't do much to offset the near 8% decline against the greenback in the last 5 years. 48% of Uganda's foreign public debt is dollar denominated, and roughly 8%, about $910 million, is denominated in the yuan. Bitcoin has had a rather torrid time in the third week of April. It fell as low as 47.20 to the dollar, but it's clawed back some of those losses since then. It's risen to over $55,250 in today's session. Ethereum, another large cryptocurrency, also continues to rack up gains. On a year-to-date basis, it's up nearly 260%. That's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. As always, we'd like to hear your thoughts on the content you've seen on the program in the last hour. There are many ways to get your thoughts back to us, all of them on your screens right now. I'm Ramah Nyang in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Thank you for your company in the last hour. The World Today is up next from Washington, D.C.